educate, empower, enable, impact. Thank you for tuning in to That Will Never Work podcast, where we share inspiring information and personal experiences related to business and the entrepreneurial journey from those who are leaders in their respective field. Now, here's your host, author and business coach, Maurice.
I thank you very much for tuning in today. I have a treat for you today. He is a serial entrepreneur with a focus on SaaS. For some of you who don't know, that is software as a service, technology and information marketing. His role as a mentor and coach to entrepreneurs, he has helped small business owners make the transition from solopreneur to business owner. An important distinction that many entrepreneurs can easily miss when working in their business instead of on their business. And that's what we're going to concentrate on today, because some of us don't understand what that really means, right? And since 1998, he has been helping entrepreneurs discover the core strengths in themselves, which is very important, in their business, and realize their true potential, combining passion and expertise to grow their businesses and attain the freedom they deserve, which also, as y'all well know, we've been told on That Will Never Work, is understanding your brand. Who are you, how, as you're building this, right? But one of the key things, like I said, we're going to talk about today is understanding the difference between working in your business and versus on your business. I thank y'all very much for tuning in. I welcome Jeremy. Jeremy, thank you for coming on the show today.
Thanks for having me on. This is great.
Sure, no problem. So again, in your bio, you talk about working in your business, versus on your business. And a lot of times we don't understand just that one little letter, I turn the I to an O or O to an I, right? Something that small, but it has the greatest impact. So what is that? What are the differences?
Yeah, so if you look at many business owners, a lot of entrepreneurs get started as what we call a technician. If you're familiar with Michael Gerber's The E-Myth Revisited, he tells the story of Sally, who loves making pies, and then she decides to go open a pie shop.
Okay.
And realizes that, the business of running a pie shop is almost nothing about making pies and has everything to do with the marketing, the sales, the
Right.
hiring, the systems, the managing, the bookkeeping, the business stuff. And so for a lot of business owners, they also get started as a technician. Maybe you're a plumber working for a plumbing company and you go hang your own shingle, right? Or you're an electrician, or you're a developer, or you do, you're an SEO expert, whatever it is. Many people work for a company and then decide to go on their own and do that trade or that skill they're used to doing for a job, but instead
Right.
of for themselves. So that first step out the door, if you're familiar with Robert Kiyosaki's cash flow quadrant, he talks about moving from an employee to becoming self-employed. And that's that first step. You now work for yourself. Congratulations, you got a business.
Right.
The business is you. And in general, that means if you're not out there working and doing the work of the business and the work in the business, there is no business. But as you start to grow and build that business, you start doing the work on the business. And that comes down to the hiring and creating systems for the people you hire to use and starting to make the business far more than just you. But none of that work is like client facing. None of that work is, at the counter with customers or under the car or whatever it is that you do for your business.
Right.
That's all sort of that bigger picture work on the business that allows you to move from the side of the quadrant with employee and self-employed over to being a true business owner. And that chasm is huge.
Right.
A litmus test I use, and you can use this for yourself as well, is to sit back for a moment, close your eyes, and imagine this situation. You step out of your business for a day, and you come back. Is the business the same? Is it a dumpster fire? Is it better than when you left it? Now do that same thing. You step out of your business for a week, for 3 weeks, for 3 months. If you can step away from your business and come back to the same or a better business, then you're truly a business owner because you have the right systems in place and the right people running those systems. For many business owners, they actually have a glorified job, right? You've got all the worst parts of a job and all the worst parts of having a business. Whereas what we want is all the best parts of having a business, which is true entrepreneurial freedom, which means you have optionality. You can choose how to spend your time, who to spend your time with, and what you do during that time.
Jeremy, here's my question though, right? For some of us who are still, working our 9 to 5s, right? And we don't understand because we have been an employee all our lives. Some of us started at 12, some of us started at 18. Some of us might start at 25 as soon as we finish college, right? So sometimes we don't understand what it is to not be an employee because we're so used to doing all the work. So what do we need to do to change that mindset?
Yeah, so there's a number of nuances that are different as you start to shift that mindset from being an employee to being self-employed to being a true business owner. You see, when you have your own business, especially if you're self-employed, nothing is guaranteed. Everything is your responsibility. And as a business owner, the buck always stops with you, right? So especially as a smaller business, if you're the one responsible for bringing in sales and closing new deals, but also fulfilling client orders or whatever it is that you do,
right,
everything's your responsibility.
right.
So if you stop going out to the job site, you stop getting jobs. If you stop going out there to do the work, you don't get paid, right? In a job, if you've got a sick day or you have a personal day or you want to do something else that's not the work, you still, if you have a salary, collect your salary and your benefits and everything else. When it's your own business, everything is your responsibility and you get all the benefits, but you've got to work for those. So until you start decoupling yourself as the business owner from the actual revenue coming in, you need to make sure the company makes money so you can get a paycheck and get the benefits and perks, right? So let's look at your different business models. If you have a continuity-based business, this might be in the form of you sell a subscription of some kind, or you maybe have a software as a service business or a membership-based business or an online learning platform, something where your customers automatically pay you every single month, right? If you find a way of delivering on that that's independent of the time you put in, that lets you have predictable cash flow regardless of the hours you put in. And a great number to look at that employees never look at, but you can look at it at a business owner, is a 2-variable equation. There's one number, which is the profit that comes out of the business. This is not your paycheck. This is the profit the business makes that you get to collect as the business owner, right? That's one number. So what's the profit that comes out in a month, a year, a week, whatever? And how many hours did you put in during that time? So when you look at the ratio between those two, you can get the effective hourly rate for you as the owner of that business. Now, when you first get started, that's not going to be a very good number.
Right.
And that job's going to look pretty attractive. And I'll tell you, especially as you start getting out there and dipping your toe and running your own business, the security of a job, the fact that you can just collect a paycheck and you have all the benefits and the sick days and all those things, that can be pretty attractive. And if you've got friends who also have stock options and other perks and things like that, that can be pretty attractive, especially as you start out running your own business and you don't have any of those things.
Right, right.
But as you build that business and start to replace yourself in the business, that equation can turn. And sometimes it's by choice. A quick story I can share with you is, as my wife and I were starting our family, I shared the news with my team. I let them know that, hey, we're going to be having a baby in 6 months and, we're really excited and my team is wonderful and supportive. And a good takeaway for you is always hire people more experienced and smarter than you, right? So my team, many of them had families. They all were excited for me. And then they asked the question of, well, Jeremy, how much time are you going to take off? I don't know. I hadn't thought about it. I've always worked for myself. Right, so I just figured I'll take some time. It's no problem. But they said, no, Jeremy, you got to take, some significant time off. But also, here are the systems we need. Here's the knowledge you have that we need to know. And here are the key hires we need to make. And we've got 6 months to figure this out.
Right, right.
And we did. And so when my daughter was born, I was able to take 3 months off.
Nice.
That means no emails, no messages, not checking in, not looking at reports, no meetings. That was 3 months of truly being offline and being able to be there and be present with our newborn. And when my son was born a few years later, I got to do that same thing again. And the business was able to run independent of me. And I still got all the benefits of running a business, even though I wasn't showing up for 3 months at a time. Now, that was a choice I made. And I had the right team members in place to support that, which was, I'm very fortunate. And that was a wonderful, wonderful situation.
Right.
But sometimes you don't get to make that choice. It gets made for you.
Right.
I'll share with you briefly the story of Ryan. He had he started a business and they were doing demolition work. And he showed up to do all the estimates and quotes and, sell new customers into the services and show up at the job site to make sure the guys were there and got the work done. He was very hands-on. The business very much depended on his presence and his physicality. Well, one day he's at the job site talking to a customer, and he looks up to see the trailer on the back of a truck with the bobcat in the back rolling down the hill towards him. And he looks up in time to see this trailer just run him over, snaps his leg, breaks some ribs, drags his body bleeding down the street, and finally comes to a stop. And so when he comes to in intensive care, he's just shattered. His body's broken.
Right.
And as he's in the hospital room, he's looking at this and thinking like, well, what am I supposed to do? My business depends on all the stuff I do. So he took a beat and realized, okay, I'm going to have to hire someone to go out there and give estimates to new customers. I'm going to have to get the right systems in place and the technology so his team could clock in on their phone from the job site and it would geotag and timestamp them being there at the job site.
Right.
And so he started putting systems and technology and people in place in the business. And wouldn't you know it, he was working less in the business and the business was growing. And so sometimes this math of the hours you put in and the profit that comes out is a choice you make, and other times it's sort of forced upon you. But if you're working your JOB and you want to start something, you got to start somewhere. So start that side hustle, start that business, but be mindful that you're not just replacing job security with self-employed insecurity. Go out there with a plan of actually building a real business that is better than the JOB that you have today.
So there's two things that I want to touch on real quick. One, sometimes them golden handcuffs, they're too gold, right? And sometimes we want to break them things, so like you said, that job, those benefits, all those type of things. Even when you said something about taking time and all, taking time off, some of us like, hey, you know what? I can go to this maternity leave over here and I can still, I still have time. I could just still do this short-term disability. I think there's some things that, keeps us, tied to the job. That's number one. Number two, I want to say is, which is what I would like for you to talk about. When we think of us being business owners, you're talking about trusting someone else. A lot of times that's a really hard place for us to be, which is in a trusting situation, especially if we really don't believe that people see what our vision is and our goals, right? And on top of something else you said, employing someone that's smarter than us, that's also difficult, right? So how do we build up that trust to get to that next level?
So you want team members who aren't just there for a paycheck, right? So I'd heard forever about this idea of like, oh yeah, you should have your core values and figure out your mission, vision, purpose, and like, you want the plaque on the wall and all this great stuff. And I always said, yeah, that's great. So how do we do that? And I just kept hearing again and again about why you should have your core values and why they're important. And again, it was reinforced, do it. But no one ever explained how to figure that stuff out. And that was until I came across a phenomenal book called Traction by Gino Wickman. Traction was the first book I read that actually went into not just here's what core values are, but like here's the exercise and the process to sit down with your team and the questions to ask and what to do so the output of that conversation is core values. And so after I read that, I went to my team and I said, all right, guys, here's this great book. I bought everyone a copy. Go read up on this. Next week, we're having a meeting and we're going to get into this and do that and have that first meeting. And so as I'm explaining and talking about what that process is, everyone got that. And we moved on with our meeting. And we moved on to a different topic, just the business of the day, which was there was a customer request about some new functionality to add to one of our products. And there was sort of the easy way to do that and solve for just that one customer. But we said, well, what's our more generic way of doing this that helps not just this one customer, but helps all of our customers? Right. And so as we explored this idea, we realized, yeah, we could do something quick, but like when we do something, we do it right. And there was sort of a pause. And one of my team members on this call was like, well, Jeremy, I think that was probably one of our core values right there. And so before we even had this meeting around, the core values, the mindset was already there and our team was seeing the culture we already had and starting to craft those core values ahead of time. So when you figure out what your mission, vision, purpose, and core values and all that stuff are, that can suddenly be a part of all of your team meetings. That can be a part of all of your customer communications. That can live and breathe everywhere within your company. And then when you're making decisions, you're not making a decision about what do I want versus what do you want versus what does a customer want. All the conversations are within the context of these core values. So it's you and me together on the same side of the table having a conversation about how we are supporting the mission, the vision, and the purpose. Right? So when we talk about trust, right, you're looking for hires and team members who also believe in that mission, that vision, and purpose, and are willing to do what it takes to help us all get there. There's some flawed thinking I see oftentimes that becomes a blocker for many solopreneurs. And that thinking is that if they hire someone, there's one of two things. One is that if I hire someone, they'll never do it as well as I do it. Right? And we'll come back to that in a second.
Right.
And the second is, if I hire someone and teach them how to do things, they'll go off and start a business and compete with me.
Right. Correct.
And these are both like really limiting beliefs. So if you look at most people, most everyone has a job. Entrepreneurship is for the select weirdos out there like you and me, right? It's not meant for everyone. It comes with a whole lot of risk and a lot of challenges and a lot of difficulty.
Right.
So most folks don't want to start a business. Most people want the security of a job, the predictability of a paycheck, right? They want to be able to show up and do a great job and go home. And those people can make wonderful team members. So the mindset of everyone's going to go out there and compete with me and sell against me is pretty limiting belief. Most folks want a job, right? Back to that first one though, this idea that no one can do things as well as you comes from a perfectionist mindset, right? There's a reason you're really good at what you do. And there's a reason that artists can be really great artists. It's because they're never satisfied and they're always fine-tuning and always perfecting.
Right.
That's what lets you deliver a high quality of service and offer a wonderful product. Especially as a smaller business owner, you're putting your name, your brand on that.
Right.
And for someone else to go out there and deliver with your name on there, yeah, you're spot on. There's a lot of trust involved in that. But we also have to realize that when we create a system, an important part of a system is defining what success looks like. And once you define what success looks like and you have a deliverable, one of three things can happen. One is that the deliverable doesn't meet the definition of success, and you go back and you have a conversation around where things fell short and why and how to do better next time, right? That is a failure of a person to follow the system, and you work with the person on that. The second possibility is the person feels they met the definition of success and you realize it's not what you wanted, and that comes down to a system problem. You didn't clearly enough define what success is. So you dial in what that definition is, right? And the third outcome is that, isn't this what we want, is that the definition of success is met and all is well. You think about when you go to a burger restaurant, right? Think McDonald's, classic example of repeatability in systems. The burger should come out the same every single time. You don't want someone back there freestyling and doing things their own way.
Right.
Every single burger should come out exactly the same. If it doesn't, for a company like McDonald's, that was a failure of a person to follow the system. But as you start putting systems in place in your business, you're going to realize that your definition of success versus what someone else hears may not be perfectly aligned. And so you fine tune and you refine what that looks like until you have a clear definition that someone can use as a rubric and look at the output versus what it should be. And when those two align, you know you've got a good system, someone trained in the system, and a predictable result that you're proud to put your name on.
So something I want to backtrack a little bit, what you said a little earlier, but I think it ties in with the McDonald's mentality. It might come off as if the product that I'm presenting is generic, right? You said something about being generic. And in that, there is a level of perfection. There's a level of sustainability. There's a lot of things that come out of that generic mentality, because sometimes in this society, we're too busy looking at somebody else's shiny new toy. You get what I mean? So how important is it for us to stay in our lane, regardless if it looks generic, it feels generic to us, but it might not be to somebody else? Yeah.
So you don't want to be generic to your customer, right? You don't want to be a commodity. Right? Once someone can look at you and compare you to a few other companies and a few other competitors, you've already lost the game. you should be viewed as there's nothing else like you. No one else is offering what you offer, and you truly are unique and you stand alone, right? So no, you don't want to have a generic solution. However, internally, you want consistent, predictable output from that system. So I'm a coffee guy. I love coffee. I love craft coffee. I love finding local great roasters wherever I go. Like, that's one of my jams. We can nerd out about that, right? Now, Starbucks doesn't do latte art. Even though any good barista worth their salt knows how to do, beautiful artwork predictably on top of their lattes. If a barista from a craft coffee shop gets a job at Starbucks and tries to pull that, they are pulled back with a, no, we don't do latte art here at Starbucks. Well, why is that? It's not predictable, consistent, trainable, and so on. Right? So Starbucks will have a consistent latte wherever you go in the world. It's going to be mediocre, but it's going to be consistently mediocre, and you know what you're going to get.
Right.
You go to a smaller coffee shop, it's not a consistent experience, right? Sometimes one barista does a better job than a different one. Sometimes there is art, sometimes there's not. Sometimes the foam is perfect, sometimes it's not, right? So as a company, you generally want to have a consistent, predictable output for your customers that ideally is unique to your customers and differentiate it in the marketplace, but you still want that consistency. So yeah, don't be generic, but have a system that you can train your team on and that they can do consistently and predictably for the customers.
So, Jeremy, I appreciate you coming on today. Listen, this idea of being generic, but still standing out in the midst of the crowd. I think sometimes we feel like it's generic because it might be easier to us, because we're in that, we're doing it. It feels that way. Maybe that's just our gift. That's our talent, whatever it is, right? It just comes easy. So in that, where can they reach out to you where you can help them get to that next level and understand that even though they're generic, they still stand out amongst the crowd?
Yeah, so you can find me and all my work over at bayareamastermind.com, BAYAREA, mastermind.com. That's where I talk all about the power of the mastermind and how business owners can connect and really get that community of like-minded, growth-focused entrepreneurs who want nothing but the best for you. We have a test drive process that lets you get a peek behind the doors and actually join us for a full-day mastermind where you get to spend the day working on your business instead of in your business. And that's really where those big aha moments come from. And you can find out more about our mastermind group, that whole test drive process and everything at bayareamastermind.com.
Cool, Jeremy. I thank you very much for coming on. Of course, this information will be in the show notes, but you know what, Jeremy, before I let you go, I got to ask you one more question, man. It's my question that I ask everybody. It's my would you rather question. Would you rather choose 3 doors or a fork in the road?
Would I rather choose 3 doors or a fork in the road?
Yes.
So would I rather choose between 3 things versus 2?
It's up to you. I don't have any parameters.
Interpret it how you like. Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think 3 doors seems more restrictive, whereas, a fork in the road, you can venture off into the forest as well. So we talk about like the road less traveled versus if it's a true fork in the road, you can still make your own way. And as entrepreneurs, we're generally always making our own way, doing what nobody else has done and no one else is willing to do. So yeah, I'd take the forest route.
Really? Nice. I didn't think of the doors being restrictive. Some, like most people kind of wants more options. They think of it as more options.
I don't know. The wide open forest feels like a lot of options to me.
Oh yeah, it is. It is most definitely. But
I love that. What a great question.
Cool, man. I thank you, man. And I thank you very much for coming on today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Love the podcast and all the work you're putting together. So thank you so much. This is fun.
Cool, no problem, man. Continue to listen to That Will Never Work podcast, and I will talk to you a little later.
Thanks for listening. Find us on social media at Chisholm Group LLC and check back weekly for new episodes. Until next time, that will never work, or will it?